The scent of burnt toast still clung to the air, a cruel reminder of the morning's hurried chaos. The old, familiar hum of the refrigerator, usually a comforting presence, now seemed to mock the unsettling quiet that had fallen over what was once my peaceful bungalow. My keys, usually a cheerful jingle, lay abandoned on the faded floral rug, their clatter against the worn linoleum the only sound to break the oppressive silence. The antique oak chest, a relic from my grandmother and usually home to a riot of family photos, now lay on its side like a beached whale, its contents strewn across the floor in a sad, haphazard array. Every framed memory, every cherished smile, stared up at me through a dizzying kaleidoscope of shattered glass. "What in the blazes?" I whispered, my voice a raspy stranger in my own home. That my travel bag, still clutched in my trembling hand, thudded against the doorframe, each broken shard of glass beneath my shoes echoing the fracturing of my calm. This wasn't the cozy haven I'd left 2 weeks ago for my niece's wedding in the sun-kissed coast. This was a war zone, a brutal testament to the unwelcome intrusion of strangers. The entertainment unit, usually a proud display of classic cinema and forgotten board games, now gaped open like a hungry maw, its shelves picked clean. My beloved vintage record player, a gift from my late wife, Martha, for our 20th anniversary, was gone. The smell of stale, foreign air, mingled with something metallic and acrid, twisted my stomach. It was the scent of violated privacy, of unknown hands rifling through the intimate tapestry of my life. I bent down, my knees creaking in protest, to pick up a creased photograph near my feet. It was a sun-drenched image of my son, Jasper, at his university graduation, his cap askew, a triumphant grin splitting his face, my arm draped proudly around his shoulders. A jagged tear now marred the corner, separating us in the picture, a cruel premonition of the chasm that would soon open between us. 28 years in this bungalow, never a lock on the back door during the day, often forgetting to fasten it at night. Martha, bless her sensible soul, used to say, "Arthur, you trust people too much." She'd been right, as she always was. The kitchen, usually a symphony of clinking pottery and bubbling tea, was a tableau of disarray. Cabinet doors hung open like bewildered mouths, their porcelain contents scattered across the linoleum. My grandmother's silver-plated tea set, a treasured heirloom, was gone. The coffee canister lay overturned, its dark, aromatic grounds staining the pale countertops like dried blood. This wasn't random destruction. This was a calculated ransacking, a meticulous search for valuables. My legs felt like jelly as I ascended the stairs, each step a climb into deeper dread, a chilling realization of how utterly my sanctuary had been desecrated. The bedroom, usually a haven of quiet repose, made my breath catch in my throat. Our mattress hung half off the frame, its floral sheets a crumpled mess. Dresser drawers lay emptied onto the plush carpet. Martha's wooden jewelry box, the one that played Moon River, when opened, lay on its side, silent and empty. Her delicate pearl necklace, the antique locket her mother had given her, all the little treasures I'd kept because they still whispered of her presence, were gone. But it was my study that truly shattered something within me. The antique writing desk, where I'd penned countless letters and quiet thoughts, had been violated. The hidden compartment beneath the false bottom, where I'd kept my father's gold pocket watch, passed down through 3 generations of my family, hung open like a gaping wound. The emergency cash Martha had insisted we keep, just in case. The savings bonds we'd bought for Jasper instead of fancy holidays, thinking they'd give him a leg up someday, all gone. Who would do this? I spoke aloud to the echoing emptiness, my voice barely a whisper. Who even knew about? The terrible thought crept in like a chilling fog, a cold dread rising from the pit of my stomach. Someone who'd been here before, someone who knew about the hidden compartment, knew where I kept the spare key beneath the bird bath, knew I'd be away for exactly 2 weeks. I sank into my desk chair, the only piece of furniture still upright in the room, the familiar creak a hollow comfort. My hands trembled as I reached for the telephone, muscle memory guiding my fingers. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice was a fragile lifeline in the swirling chaos. My house, someone broke in, I stammered, my voice thick with unshed tears. I just got home from the sun-kissed coast, and everything's destroyed. Are you in immediate danger, sir? Are the perpetrators still on the premises? No, they're gone. But they took everything. They knew exactly where to look. We're dispatching officers to your location now. Can you give me your address? As sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second, I remained surrounded by the wreckage of my peaceful life. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the destruction with a golden light that seemed to mock the violation of everything I'd held sacred. The sound of approaching help mingled with the echo of my own words. They knew exactly where to look. The wail of the sirens intensified, 2 patrol cars pulling into my driveway, their flashing lights painting the familiar facade of my bungalow with an eerie red and blue glow. I still clutched the phone, the dispatcher's voice a steady hum against my ear. Officer Reynolds, a tall, imposing woman with kind but weary eyes, emerged first, followed by her younger partner, Officer Chun, who already had her camera and evidence kit in hand, her gaze sweeping over the visible damage through my front windows. Mr. Finch? I'm Officer Reynolds. This is Officer Chun. Are you injured? No, just overwhelmed, I managed, my voice sounding distant, disconnected from the raw emotions churning within me. Reynolds' experienced eyes swept over the living room, taking in details I hadn't even registered. Officer Chun, start with photos of the entry points and main areas. Sir, I need you to step outside while we do a quick security sweep. From my front porch, I watched them move through my home with professional efficiency. Reynolds meticulously checked closets and corners, while Chun documented everything with systematic clicks of her camera. The flash-illuminated rooms I'd lived in for decades, now transformed into foreign landscapes of destruction. All clear, Reynolds called, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. Mr. Finch, you can come back in. Let's start at the point of entry. She led me to the back door, where splintered wood around the lock told its own grim story. Forced entry, but quietly. See how they worked the wood? Took time, used the right tools. This wasn't some kid looking for quick cash. Chun knelt beside the doorframe, dusting for fingerprints with careful precision. The damage pattern suggests they knew what they were doing. Professional, or at least experienced. We moved room by room, Reynolds asking questions, her pen scribbling notes in a small pad, while Chun collected evidence. Each violation felt fresh, new, as we cataloged it officially. How long were you away, Mr. Finch, and who knew about your trip? 2 weeks. I visited my niece in the sun-kissed coast. I told my son, Jasper, and my neighbor, Greg, mentioned it to a few people at the grocery store. I paused, thinking, but the most valuable things, they went straight for them. How could they have known about my father's watch? The hidden compartment. Reynolds made another note. These thieves knew exactly where to look. That suggests familiarity with your home. Do you have any ongoing disputes? Anyone who might hold a grudge? I'm retired, officer. I keep to myself. Help my neighbors when I can. I can't imagine who would do this. Chun looked up from photographing my empty desk compartment. No random destruction here. They were looking for specific items. Jewelry, cash, electronics. But they left family photos scattered, not destroyed. Almost like they were angry, but still had some restraint. The kitchen table, miraculously untouched by the chaos, became our command post. Reynolds spread out forms while Chun entered information into her tablet. We'll need a complete inventory of missing items, Reynolds explained, her pen poised. Start with the most valuable pieces. The list grew longer as we spoke. The vintage record player, the silver-plated tea set, my father's watch, Martha's jewelry, the emergency cash, even my good gardening tools from the shed. Each item felt like another piece of my life torn away. Mr. Finch. Reynolds' tone grew gentler. I need to ask about family members. Any financial troubles? Anyone who might need money quickly? The question hit me like a physical blow. My son Jasper, he works as a graphic designer. He's had some rough patches, but he'd never. I couldn't finish the sentence. Chun looked up from her tablet. Sometimes the people closest to us surprise us. Not saying it's family, but we have to consider all possibilities. They completed their work as darkness settled over the neighborhood. Reynolds handed me a case number written on official letterhead, explaining the investigation process, the follow-up procedures, the slim chances of recovery. "One more thing," Reynolds said as they prepared to leave. "You might want to consider staying somewhere else tonight. Sometimes perpetrators return, especially if they think they missed something." Chun nodded. "Change your locks tomorrow?" "Definitely, and maybe install a security system." I stood in my doorway, watching their taillights disappear into the night. The house felt different now, not just violated, but officially categorized, processed, reduced to case numbers and evidence tags. The silence returned, deeper than before. Fingerprint powder coated my furniture like ash, and yellow evidence tape marked areas I couldn't disturb. My home had become a crime scene, and I was now officially a victim. But Reynolds' words echoed in my mind. Familiarity with your home. Someone who knew your habits, your hiding places, your schedule. The terrible possibility I'd been avoiding suddenly seemed less terrible and more inevitable. The police cars disappeared around the corner, leaving me alone with the wreckage and the growing weight of exhaustion. 2 weeks of travel, hours of emotional trauma, and now this hollow silence that seemed to press against my eardrums. I attempted to restore some order, uprighting a lamp here, stacking scattered books there, but every small effort revealed 10 more violations. Broken picture frames cut my fingers. Overturned furniture proved too heavy for my aging back. The futility of it overwhelmed me. My body ached from the flight, from hunching over evidence forms, from the tension that had seized my shoulders the moment I'd seen Martha's shattered photograph. The house felt unsafe now, contaminated by strange hands and suspicious motives. I needed help. For the first time in 5 years, since Martha's funeral, I needed to lean on someone else. My phone lay buried under scattered papers from my desk. I found it beneath a pile of old utility bills. Its screen was cracked, but still functional. The contact list felt foreign under my shaking finger. When had I become so isolated that calling my own son required courage? The phone rang 3 times before Jasper answered. "Dad." His voice sounded strange, tight with something I couldn't identify. "Why are you calling so late?" "Jasper, son, something terrible happened. My house was robbed while I was in the sun-kissed coast." Silence stretched between us. In the background, I heard television noise, a woman's voice, perhaps his partner, asking something I couldn't quite make out. "Robbed?" he finally said, his voice laced with a surprising lack of concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine physically, but the house is destroyed. They took everything. Your grandmother's silver, Grandpa's watch, even the record player. I can't stay here tonight. Could I possibly come over? Just for a few days until I can get things sorted." The pause felt endless. When he spoke again, his voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. "Dad, look, I can't help you right now. I've got my own problems." The words hit me like a slap. In 35 years, through every childhood crisis, every scraped knee and broken heart, every financial struggle of his early adulthood, I'd never heard him speak to me like this. "But I'm your father. I just need a couch for a few nights until I can." I said no. His tone grew harder, almost frantic. "I don't need another mouth to feed right now. Find a hotel or something." "Jasper, please. This is your childhood home. Someone violated everything your mother and I built together. I need family right now." "Well, family isn't always there when you need them, is it?" The bitterness in his voice shocked me. "You'll figure something out. You always do." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, replaying the conversation in disbelief. His mother would have been ashamed. We'd raised him better than this, taught him about loyalty, about taking care of family, about standing together when times got tough. But something in his voice haunted me. Not just cruelty, fear, guilt. Maybe. Like a child caught in a lie who lashes out to avoid consequences. "No." My own son said no. The house felt colder now, the violations deeper. Material loss was one thing. Televisions could be replaced. Jewelry was just metal and stones. But this cut into something more fundamental. 35 years of birthday parties and school plays, of scraped knees kissed better and college tuition paid without complaint. And this was how family responded when crisis struck. I gathered a few clean clothes from my bedroom floor, stuffing them into an overnight bag that had somehow escaped the chaos. My back protested as I bent to collect scattered socks and underwear, but physical pain seemed minor compared to the hollow ache in my chest. The front door felt heavier than usual as I pulled it closed behind me. Each step across my yard toward Greg's house carried the weight of defeat. The porch light next door glowed like a beacon, promising the kindness my own blood had denied me as I walked through the cool evening air. One thought kept circling back. Jasper's voice had sounded wrong. Not just cruel, but desperate. Like someone trying to convince himself as much as me. Like someone carrying a terrible secret. Greg's front door opened before my knuckles could touch the wood. His weathered face, lined with concern, appeared in the yellow porch light like a lighthouse keeper welcoming a storm-tossed sailor to shore. "Arthur, come in, come in." He stepped aside, gesturing me into his modest living room. "I saw you walking over. Police already asked me everything about what happened." The warmth of his home enveloped me like a physical embrace. Unlike my violated sanctuary, Greg's place felt safe. Worn furniture arranged with military precision, photographs of his service years lined up on shelves, everything in its proper place. "What a terrible thing to happen," he continued, taking my overnight bag. "In this neighborhood, 28 years we've been neighbors, and I never thought I'd see the day when something like this would touch our street." Relief flooded through me. Here was someone who understood. Someone who cared without conditions or cruel rejections. "Of course you'll stay here," Greg said, already pulling blankets from a hall closet. "Should have thought to offer earlier, but I figured family would." "Well, never mind that now." He set up the couch with military efficiency, each pillow positioned just so. Within minutes, he had a proper sleeping arrangement prepared and was guiding me toward his kitchen. "Coffee? Tea? Something stronger?" Greg pulled out chairs around his small table. "You look like you've been through a war zone. Coffee would be perfect." I sank into the offered chair, suddenly aware of how much my body ached. Greg moved with purpose, starting the coffee maker, retrieving mugs from perfectly organized cabinets. The familiar ritual of hospitality soothed something raw inside me. "I told Officer Reynolds everything I could remember," he said, settling across from me as the coffee brewed. "About seeing Jasper's old hatchback at your place a few times this week." My head snapped up. "You saw Jasper's car? Tuesday morning, I think, and maybe Thursday afternoon." Greg nodded, pouring steaming coffee into our mugs. "Good lad. Checking on his dad while you were away." The coffee warmed my hands, but Greg's words sent a different kind of heat through my chest. Pride mixed with confusion. "He's always been protective," I said slowly. "His mother taught him to look after family. Smart woman, your Martha. Rest her soul." Greg raised his mug in a small salute. "She'd be proud to see how he watches out for you." But even as I nodded agreement, something nagged at the edges of my thoughts. If Jasper had been checking on the house, why hadn't he mentioned it during our phone call? Why had he seemed so strange, so defensive? "I'm glad he was keeping an eye on the place," I said finally. "Makes this whole thing even more puzzling." Greg leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Between you and me, Arthur, I think this was professionals. The way they knew exactly what to take, how quiet they were about it. This wasn't some desperate kids looking for quick cash." "You think so?" 26 years in the service teaches you to read situations. Someone planned this carefully. Knew your routines. Knew when you'd be gone. He paused, sipping his coffee. "Question is, who could have known all that?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. I found myself thinking about everyone who knew about my sun-kissed coast trip. The grocery store clerk who'd wished me safe travels, the mailman I'd asked to hold my deliveries. My niece, of course, but she lived 2,000 miles away. And Jasper. "This feels so calculated," I admitted. Like whoever did this had been watching, learning my habits. Greg nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I told the police. Said it reminded me of intelligence gathering. Methodical, thorough, patient. We sat in comfortable silence, two old men trying to make sense of a senseless violation. Outside, the neighborhood settled into its evening quiet, porch lights creating pools of security in the darkness. "I'll help you clean up tomorrow," Greg offered. "No sense facing that mess alone. I appreciate that more than you know." The words came out rougher than intended. What else are neighbors for? Greg's smile was genuine, uncomplicated. Besides, I want to get a closer look at how they got in. Might need to upgrade my own security after this. As I prepared for bed on Greg's comfortable couch, his words echoed in my mind. Someone planned this carefully. The thought should have been frightening, but instead, I found it strangely focusing. 30 years as a civil engineer had taught me that every problem had a solution. Every mystery had clues waiting to be discovered. Someone had violated my home, stolen my memories, and somehow, I would find out who. The last thing I remembered before sleep claimed me was Greg's innocent observation. Good lad checking on his dad. Morning brought a clarity I hadn't expected. Greg's coffee, his genuine concern, and a decent night's sleep had restored some of my analytical thinking. After breakfast, I'd spent time organizing my thoughts, making lists of what needed to be done, who needed to be contacted. But one item remained at the top of my mental agenda: talking properly with Jasper. His townhouse sat in a development that had seen better days. Modest homes built for young families starting out. I'd helped him with the down payment 3 years ago, proud that my son was building his own life, his own future. Now, parking in his narrow driveway, I noticed details I'd previously overlooked. Paint peeling around the window frames, a small crack in the front step. The lawn needed attention. Times must be harder than he'd let on. I pressed the doorbell and waited. Sounds came from inside, movement, maybe voices, but no one answered immediately. Finally, footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal Jasper's face, pale and startled. "Dad? What are you doing here?" His reaction caught me off guard. This wasn't the greeting of a son concerned about his father's crisis. This was the response of someone who'd been caught unprepared, possibly unwelcome. "Hello, son. Sorry to drop by unannounced, but we need to talk." I studied his face, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the way he kept glancing over his shoulder. "After last night's call, I thought we should clear the air." Yeah, okay. Come in, I guess." The living room felt cramped and cluttered. Magazines scattered across a coffee table, dishes on every surface. Jasper moved with nervous energy, clearing space on the couch while avoiding my eyes. "Where's Clara?" I asked, settling into the offered seat. "Work. She's pulling double shifts this week." He perched on the edge of an armchair, his leg bouncing with anxiety. "Look, Dad. About last night. I was tired, stressed. Didn't mean to sound so harsh. I understand pressure, son. We all face difficult times." I kept my voice gentle, non-threatening. "But family should stick together during crisis. Don't you think?" Jasper's laugh came out brittle, forced. "Right. Family? Of course." Something in his tone made me lean forward. "Greg mentioned he saw your car at my place a few times this week." The effect was immediate. Jasper's bouncing legs stilled completely, his face going rigid. "Did he? I don't remember driving by there." "You were checking on the house while I was away, weren't you? Looking after things like your mother taught you. Maybe once or twice." His voice came out tight, defensive. Why does it matter? The contradiction struck me like a physical blow. First, he didn't remember. Now, maybe once or twice. My engineer's mind, trained to spot inconsistencies in complex systems, began cataloging the discrepancies. "You seem nervous, Jasper. This whole thing has you more shaken than I expected." He shot to his feet, pacing to the window. "Of course, I'm shaken. My father's house was robbed. Someone violated your privacy, stole your things. How am I supposed to feel?" But his body language told a different story. The rigid shoulders, the avoidance of eye contact, the way he wrung his hands. This wasn't grief or concern. This was the behavior of someone carrying a tremendous burden. "Sit down, son. You're making me nervous." Jasper returned to his chair, but couldn't stay still. His fingers drummed against the armrest. His eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal seeking escape routes. "Tell me about these visits to check on the house," I said carefully. "What exactly were you checking?" "Just, making sure everything looked normal, that nobody was bothering the place." "And did everything look normal?" The pause stretched too long. "Yeah, everything was fine." But nothing about this conversation was fine. Every answer felt rehearsed. Every gesture calculated to deflect rather than inform. This wasn't the son I'd raised, the boy who used to confess his smallest infractions with tears in his eyes. "Jasper, what's wrong? And don't tell me it's just the burglary. Something else is eating at you." He stood again, this time heading toward the kitchen. "I need some water. You want anything?" As he disappeared around the corner, I found myself analyzing our exchange like a failed engineering project. Every question had produced evasion. Every attempt at connection had been rebuffed. My son was lying to me, but about what? The sound of running water gave me a moment to study his living room more carefully. Bills stacked on the end table, some with red, overdue stamps. A poker magazine opened to an article about strategies. Empty beer bottles lined up behind the couch. When Jasper returned, a glass trembling slightly in his hand, I made one more attempt at direct communication. "Son, if you're in some kind of trouble, you can tell me. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." His laugh came out harsh, almost bitter. "Trouble? What kind of trouble could I be in, Dad?" The question felt like a challenge, but I couldn't understand the rules of whatever game we were playing. "I don't know. That's why I'm asking." Jasper sat back down, but his entire body remained coiled like a spring under tension. Every few seconds, his eyes would flick toward the mantelpiece, then quickly away, as if checking on something he didn't want me to notice. Jasper excused himself to the kitchen again, muttering something about needing to check on dinner preparations. The house felt too quiet with his nervous energy removed, like the moment between lightning and thunder, when the air itself holds its breath. I sat back in the uncomfortable chair, letting my eyes wander around the cluttered living room. Bills, magazines, empty bottles, the debris of a life that wasn't going according to plan. Poor kid was clearly struggling more than I'd realized. My gaze drifted to the mantelpiece, where a few framed photographs sat beside some decorative items. Jasper as a child, grinning gap-toothed at a soccer game. His wedding day, arm around Clara in her simple white dress. A few knickknacks that looked like flea market finds, and a watch. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, just another piece of decoration among the accumulated possessions of a young couple trying to make their house feel like home. But something about its profile, the curve of its case, made me look twice. The brass face caught the afternoon light streaming through Jasper's windows. The leather band, worn soft with age and handling. The distinctive shape of the winding crown that had been slightly bent since 1987, when 10-year-old me had dropped it while trying to wind it in secret. My heart stopped. I rose from the chair slowly, my legs feeling disconnected from my body. Each step toward the mantelpiece required conscious effort, as if I were walking through deep water. Please be wrong. Please let this be some terrible mistake. But as I drew closer, more details emerged with sickening clarity. The small scratch on the crystal face where I'd carelessly bumped it against a doorframe in my childhood. The patina on the brass case that came from decades of handling by loving hands. The inscription on the back that I couldn't see but knew by heart. To William Finch, faithful service, 1943 to 1978. My father's watch. My grandfather's legacy. The timepiece that had been passed down through 3 generations of Finch men, meant someday to rest in Jasper's hands through proper ceremony. Not theft. The room seemed to tilt around me. Blood rushed in my ears like ocean waves, and I gripped the edge of the mantelpiece to keep from falling. 35 years of fatherhood collapsed into a single devastating moment of absolute clarity. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bicycle, to throw a fastball, to treat people with dignity and respect. The young man I'd sent to university, helped buy a house, welcomed into my heart every single day of his life. He had robbed me. The scratch from when I dropped it at age 10, I whispered to the empty room. There's no doubt. Footsteps approached from the kitchen. Jasper's voice called out, Dad, everything okay out there? I forced myself to move away from the mantelpiece, to return to my chair with what I hoped looked like casual movement. But my hands shook as I gripped the armrests, and my breathing came in short, sharp bursts. That's a handsome watch on your mantel, I said when he reappeared, my voice sounding strange and distant even to my own ears. Jasper glanced over casually. Too casually. Oh, that old thing? Picked it up at a pawn shop downtown. The lie hit me like a physical blow. Not just the theft, but the ease with which deception rolled off his tongue. Looks like an antique. Good quality. Yeah? Got it cheap. Guy probably didn't know its value. Each word twisted the knife deeper. My own flesh and blood, looking me in the eye and lying about stealing his great-grandfather's watch. The watch that should have been his inheritance, his connection to family history and honor. Well, I managed, standing on unsteady legs. I should probably head back. Greg's helping me clean up this afternoon. Jasper seemed almost relieved at my departure. Sure, Dad. And again, sorry about last night. I'll call you later. See how you're doing. Another lie. We both knew he wouldn't call. The walk to my car felt like a journey through quicksand. Each step required tremendous effort, and the world around me seemed muffled, distant. I fumbled with the keys, dropped them twice before managing to start the engine. As I pulled out of his driveway, I caught a glimpse of Jasper in his front window, not waving goodbye, not showing concern for his robbed father, just watching, making sure I actually left. My own son, my own flesh and blood. How could he look me in the eye? The drive back to Greg's house passed in a blur of automatic reflexes. Turn signals, stop signs, traffic lights that I navigated without conscious thought. My mind churned with terrible mathematics, the timing of my trip, the knowledge of my hiding places, the surgical precision of what had been taken. Everything I'd taught him about honor, about family, about standing up for what was right, all meaningless. By the time I parked in Greg's driveway, one thing had crystallized in my mind with absolute clarity. If Jasper thought he could destroy everything his mother and I had built together, steal from his own family, and walk away untouched, he had seriously underestimated what his old man was capable of. The boy had made the worst mistake of his life. Greg's borrowed sedan felt foreign beneath my hands as I gripped the steering wheel outside Jasper's townhouse. The key turned in the ignition with a mechanical click that seemed unnaturally loud in the afternoon silence. The scratch from when I dropped it at 12 years old. There's no mistaking it. Traffic moved around me in a blur of color and motion while my mind replayed the devastating moment of recognition. The distinctive bend in the winding crown. The patina that came from decades of loving handling. My father's inscription, hidden on the back but burned into my memory. I pulled over at a gas station, hands trembling too violently to maintain safe driving. Customers walked past my windshield, living their normal lives, while mine crumbled into fragments. 35 years of fatherhood, reduced to a single undeniable truth, sitting on my son's mantelpiece. The engine idled as I sat there, breathing deeply, trying to process what felt impossible to accept. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe someone had sold it to him legitimately. But the timing, his nervousness, those visits Greg had mentioned, everything pointed toward one horrifying conclusion. 20 minutes passed before I trusted myself to continue driving. The streets of Springbrook blurred past like watercolors in rain, familiar neighborhoods becoming foreign landscapes through my shock-clouded vision. Greg was working in his garden when I pulled into his driveway. He looked up with a smile that faded immediately when he saw my face. Arthur, you look like you've seen a ghost. The talk with Jasper didn't go well. Something's not right, Greg. The words came out hoarse, scratchy. I can't explain it yet, but something's very wrong. He set down his pruning shears, brushing soil from his hands. Family troubles can be the hardest kind. You need to talk about it. Not yet. I need to be certain first. Need to check some things. Greg studied my face with the sharp eyes of someone who'd learned to read people under pressure. Well, you know where to find me when you're ready. Coffee is always on. Inside his guest room, I lay on the narrow bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling. The watch image replayed endlessly, brass face catching afternoon light, leather band worn soft with age. sitting there like an accusation among the scattered possessions of my son's modest life. But doubt gnawed at the edges of my certainty. 35 years of raising him, teaching him right from wrong. Was it all meaningless? Had I failed so completely that the boy who once cried over stepping on an ant could rob his own father? The engineer in me demanded proof beyond emotion, evidence that would stand up to scrutiny, that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as coincidence. If I was going to destroy our relationship forever, I owed it to both of us to be absolutely certain. I pulled out a notepad and began making lists, a methodical approach to an impossible situation. Times, dates, opportunities, what had been stolen and where it might have gone, who might remember seeing what. The poker magazine I'd noticed made sudden, terrible sense. Bills with overdue stamps. Jasper's strange behavior, his desperate rejection when I'd asked for help. The pieces formed a pattern I'd been too trusting to see. But I needed more than patterns. I needed proof that would satisfy a court of law, because that's where this was heading if my suspicions proved correct. 3 hours of planning later, I had a strategy. It would take time, patience, and the kind of methodical investigation that had served me well in 30 years of engineering problem-solving. If I was wrong, I would beg his forgiveness and spend the rest of my life making amends. If I was right, the boy who stole from his father would learn that his old man was capable of more than he'd ever imagined. The yellow pages felt brittle under my fingers as I searched for pawn shops across Springbrook. Greg had lent me his car again. No questions asked. The kind of trust I'd once extended to my own son. 7 days of systematic investigation began with Pete's treasure trove on Oak Avenue. The owner, a heavy-set man with suspicious eyes, examined the photographs I'd prepared carefully. Yeah, I remember that watch. Vintage piece, real quality workmanship. He tapped the photo with a thick finger. Young guy, maybe mid-30s, seemed nervous as a cat. Said it was his grandfather's watch, but needed cash quick for some emergency. My heart hammered against my ribs. Can you describe him more specifically? Dark hair, about 6 feet tall, wearing work clothes. Pete's eyes narrowed. Why you asking this? About insurance or something? Something like that. I kept my voice steady. Do you still have any paperwork? The receipt copy showed a date. May 13th, 2 days into my sun-kissed coast trip. The signature was illegible, but the physical description matched Jasper perfectly. $300 for a watch worth 10 times that amount. 2 more pawn shops yielded similar results. My vintage record player at Second Chance Finds. Martha's Jewelry at Golden Memories Consignment. Each transaction desperate, hurried, items sold far below their value by a young man who fit my son's description perfectly. Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor 3 houses down, welcomed me into her kitchen with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely had visitors. Oh yes, Mr. Finch, I definitely saw that hatchback on the 13th, around 2 in the afternoon. Thought it was strange since you weren't home, but figured maybe Jasper was checking on things. Did you see the driver clearly? Not his face, but the build looked familiar. Young man, moved like he was in a hurry, parked right in your driveway, bold as anything. The timeline aligned perfectly. While I'd been having lunch with my niece in San Francisco, my son had been robbing my house 3 time zones away. Security camera footage from the Millers, 2 houses down, showed a hatchback matching Jasper's license plate number. The timestamp read 2:17 p.m., May 13th, right in the window Mrs. Higgins had specified. Each piece of evidence felt like another nail in the coffin of my hopes. The methodical part of my mind cataloged every detail, while the father in me died a little more with each confirmation. Friday evening, I followed him from the graphic design studio to the River's Edge Casino, watched through the parking lot as he walked inside with the purposeful stride of someone feeding an addiction. 2 hours later, he emerged looking defeated, shoulders slumped, probably lighter by whatever money he'd started with. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Desperation had driven him to rob his own father, and here he was, throwing away more money he didn't have. Back at Greg's kitchen table,